What is going on, everybody, and welcome back into Barley Studios. Now, this is the final session number 7 of this awesome project where we were sculpting a From the Grave 3D tumbler. Now, although this video could technically stand on itself in its own content, because we are sculpting something separate from the actual main build, I still felt like it's part of the actual project, so we should include it in the playlist. But just be aware, this is a build of where we're going to be sculpting from Sculpey Original a Raven. Now, the Raven, I will say at the beginning, because I've already created it, right, and we're doing a voiceover, that the Raven does sit a little bit lower on its legs than it would if I were to sculpt it by itself. And I did not originally intend to make it sitting so low, but after adding the feet and the claws on the crow feet, or the raven feet, it did sit a little bit lower. I'm still completely okay with it, and I'm very happy with how it turned out for the project. And then maybe I'll do something to kind of incorporate more of like a feather texture around the legs, make it look like it's blended. But just be aware, as we get to the later stages, you will see that it feels like it's a little bit sitting down further on its hind legs than it would normally. But I'm okay with that. Okay, so just, I'm not perfect, we're not perfect, we make mistakes in crafting, but if this were to be sculpted on its own on a diorama, I would be correcting that. Just be aware. So as you can see here on the original piece of armature wire that we had sculpted into the topper in the previous session number 6 of this build, we have already gone ahead and put a piece of aluminum foil on that. Now, I did go ahead and wrap that aluminum foil with a thicker gauge of armature wire. And now what we're doing here is I wrapped it with a thinner gauge as well. The thinner gauge is more so allowing us to kind of create the general shapes that we want. Now, I have never sculpted a bird before. This is very new for me, and it's very exciting. If I haven't done something, I'm going to own up to it and say, hey, look, guys, I'm going to try this out. We're going to see how it turns out. We're going to see where it takes us. If it doesn't work out, then we'll try something different or maybe redo it. That's the great thing about clay. Although it is a pain to get the clay off the armature wire and the aluminum foil, we're going to do the best we can. So we're going to begin by just blocking in the general shape of the actual bird itself. We're going to just continue to add in little rolls and flat pieces of clay along the way until we get the general build-up in the shape that we want. Even after we get the general shape that we want, we'll probably still continuously add clay and take away. So it's all about adding, take away, adding, take away. Addition and subtraction, right? Until we get the general shape that we like before we add any kind of details. Now, as you can see in the background there, just beside the Diglett diorama there, that we are on TikTok Live. Yes, we have been creating this completely on TikTok Live. We have been scheduling this project for TikTok Lives on sporadic days. So if those of you who are able to watch this on TikTok Live in a live format, thank you for stopping in. I appreciate what you do, and I really do enjoy talking to you guys while I'm creating awesome pieces of art like this. I'm really trying to challenge myself to create more art with you guys on TikTok Live, and I'm glad that I'm able to kind of create this specifically for TikTok Live. Although I'm repurposing this format and this content for YouTube as well, for these voiceover sessions. And this is, again, session number 7. If you would like to go back and watch all of the previous YouTube sessions for this project, From the Grave 3D Tumbler out of Sculpey Original, then you can go definitely check out that playlist. Either you can jump ship now, go to my YouTube channel, go to playlists and projects, and you'll be able to find that, or you can wait till the end of this video and I will link that so you can see all of those videos in its entirety. As soon as we get done with this portion of the project here, we're going to be rolling into the painting portion, which is going to be applying detail work to this entire build. And eventually we will also do a weigh-in to see how much this sculpture actually weighs before it is truly up for sale. So if you want this object, just let me know ahead of time, and I will kind of put it aside for you. If you want to pre-order it, you can. It is, however, of course, not completely done yet, but I hope to have it done by, if not October and Halloween of 2023, then hopefully by the mid-November of 2023, just to put like kind of a year stamp on that. So if you're watching this in years to come, then you can kind of know when this project was created there. As you can see here, we're really starting to block in some of the shape here, and I can get to talking, you guys. I know you're probably all thinking, man, he could talk a lot. Of course I can. It's my video, my content, it's my rules. What we're going to do here is we're going to start to add in a little bit of a beak shape here. Now this beak will take a little bit of a transformative look to it as we roll through the process. We're going to continuously add in more clay. I felt like the head wasn't bulky enough, and a lot of the ravens and crows that reference photos that I was looking at, mainly just one photo that I was looking at, there's a lot of meat and material at the very top bridge of the beak there. So I want to go ahead and build that material out, and if I need to shape it a little bit along the way, I can. I don't want that beak to look cartoonish, so I really need to kind of thicken that out around the top bridge of the beak there, the top nose, as it were. And then what we can do is we can taper it a little bit as we go. I also want to make sure that I can see the actual the mouth opening of the beak when we get it all said and done. Kind of smoothing out the back of the clay there, and I'm also beginning to discuss with the live viewers on TikTok how I would like to shape the wings. Now originally I planned to have one wing kind of hanging out away from the build, and then the other one was going to be tucked. Now you'll see here in a few minutes I'll go ahead and build this out, and although I'm working on it, I'm blocking it in, I'm trying to work on it, and I'm kind of messing with it a little bit here and there, I just wasn't feeling it, you guys. I'm not saying I can't do this, but it will probably take me a lot longer to go ahead and sculpt the wing in its detail, in its entirety, and sculpt out all the feathers than I had really intended to do for this project. And not only that, it was taking the overall addition of the Raven out and away from the project way too far. Now, there's only one piece of armature wire holding that on. Yes, it's a thicker gauge, but it's still not. It's not steel. It's not like true metal. It's like aluminum, like a thick, flexible aluminum armature wire. So this I just felt like it was going to be a problem later. So what we're going to do here is, here in a second, we're going to go ahead and sculpt in a little bit more of the body there, but we'll go ahead and remove that armature wire, and we're going to tuck the wings. Now, of course, the Raven is still going to be turning and looking towards us at the front of the project there, towards the front where the arm is going to be breaking free. But I really wanted him to have more of a projection around the shoulders. I'm going to taper that tail quite a bit, and then what we'll do is we'll kind of thicken them out around where the wings should be. The chest bone still isn't really where it needs to be, and I do go ahead and tuck and move him forward a little bit, so that way his body is just very proud, very, very upright, and then the tail feathers are going to kind of drape off to the overall downward trajectory of the actual top of the gravestone there. See, I'm really trying to still see how I want to kind of incorporate that wing. Do I kind of want to bring it down a little bit? Do I need to kind of thin it out? Do I need to add more meat around the top shoulder bone? Just trying to decide how I would like to create that. And I'm talking to some people on TikTok Live, asking them what they think, see what they're thinking about it, how it looks, and then as you can see here in a moment, I completely junked the idea. That's the great thing about clay, you guys, and those who work with clay truly understand, is nothing is set in stone until you bake it. Now, if you're working with, of course, like a DOS air dry clay, that's a different story. You need to keep it moist and kind of really figure out what you want to do before it starts to cure up or dry out on you. But that's a different story. I really do like the oven baked clay because you can really continuously work on this. You can set this off to the side for a few months and then come back to it if you needed to. Whereas air dry clay is, after overnight, it's pretty much set up and your thing is set in stone. Air dry clay does have a tendency to crack in some ways and become very brittle, and I don't want that as well. I will say that air dry clay does have a little bit more of a porous texture, so you can more easily apply paint to it, and it sticks a lot faster. Whereas this can, at times, if you sculpt it the right way, have a lot of smoothness to it, which makes the paint not as easily adhere to it. It depends on how you sculpt the overall surface. We all know that, but it's very, very interesting to use a lot of different clays. But in this situation, oven baked clay is the way to go. So I was like, ooh, let's add a hat to the Raven. No, it's not a hat. I decided to go ahead and build out the head quite a bit more. So I rolled out a large circular piece of clay, and we're just going to roll that over the head there, kind of blend that down a little bit there. And then this is going to kind of give us a ballpark of how big the shoulders or how deep the shoulders need to be. I think the chest of the breastbones there need to be a little bit more defined there. So I will come in and add more clay right there in a second, kind of define that out. Now, if you add in one entire sheet of clay to that, it really does apply its own smoothness to it, and you don't have to really work hard to get that smooth. Instead of adding a bunch of small individual pieces and then blending them in one at a time, and you have a lot of bumps and ridges and things you have to smooth out. See, that's one entire piece of clay right there, and I went ahead and added that in as one piece, and then I'll blend that in, and all the edges are blended. It's still not completely cured or adhered to the main base of the clay on the inside, but as long as you kind of adhere the outside edges, then it's not going anywhere. There it is, one complete sheet of clay there. We're adding that to the back of the head there, down the neck, onto the shoulders there, and then down the spine of the backbone there. You can kind of see it's really starting to fill out now, and that's one piece of clay, so it's very smooth. And it was very quickly just for us to quickly press in and then blend the edges, and it really kind of locks it in place. We're really starting to get that kind of bird-esque shape there. I really kind of defined the small part of the neck a little bit too much there. A lot of the ravens have a very thick plumage around the neck and around the top of the head, and then down the back into the wings, into the tail feathers. They also have very prominent shoulders and shoulder wings. So I want to make sure I can introduce a little bit of clay there, kind of build out those shoulders, give it a little bit of more of a presence than it had before we start any kind of detail work. We need to get this right before we do anything. So before you even sculpt one feather, you need to know how you would like for the feathers to be angled. You need to know where they're going to go. You need to know their size, and all of that. You need to think about that all. So here in a few minutes, you'll see that when I get to the back part of sculpting the wings and the feathers on the back of the bat, down towards the tail feathers, I will put a lot of work into that, and it's gonna require a lot of work and a lot of detail, because it needs to have it needs to be visible, and it needs to show through the paint that those feathers are prominent in there. All right, so as you can see here, we're just going to keep adding in that bulkiness, kind of shaping here and there. Now what I'm going to start to do here now is I'm going to start to introduce the silicone tip tool here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of not only just roll it back and forth to smooth particular areas, we're going to continuously add in little sheets of clay here and there just to kind of get the general shape that we need. And for instance, here I'm trying to incorporate more of a flat texture towards the back and taper it down towards the tail feathers. As you can see, we do cut quite a bit of the tail feather away here. They don't need that much tail feather, and who knows, maybe those tail feathers are kind of not flaring out. They're kind of brought inward a little bit. They're tapered. As you can see there, I'm really starting to blend in that right-hand side of the wing there. It's really starting to create more of a wing shape. And this is at the point where I decide, hey, I'm done with this wing over here. It doesn't look good. It's too far away from the actual build, and we're going to introduce something new. And I just tucked it in. So we cut that armature wire away, and we're going to tuck the wing here. So we're just going to continue adding clay to that wing there until we can kind of get the overall bulk that we need. And here we are again, adding more clay to that shoulder, to the wing bone there. We want to make sure that it builds out a little bit away from the body, so it looks like those wings are tucked underneath, and it has a lot of bulk there. Rolling the silicone tool tip back and forth, it creates little divots, and we're just generally shaping where those feathers and that meat needs to be around the body there. Applying a sheet of clay to the lower bum there, as well as to the front plumage around the breastbone there, kind of blending that up, making sure it's nice and smooth. Leaving a little bit of texture there is no big deal. Even leaving a little bit of texture has no implications or any issues, because as long as it has the general shape that you need, when you come in to add those feather textures, which it needs to have, it can't just be a smooth item unless you wanted to make it like a paintable or something, and that's not what we're making here. So I'm going to go ahead and start to shape in the wings here. Now, not just the wings or the feathers, but just the shape. We need to get the shape and the divots and the muscles and where we think the actual shape of the different categories or pieces of feather coming down the project needs to be. So for instance, you'll see I have a little bit of a triangle coming down the back of the spine there. That's because that is where the top part of the wings kind of come together on the back when they're tucked away. And then I'll come in and we're going to texture that a little bit, but we're going to remove some of the clay in a triangle fashion down from the neck down past the wings, because that's where the wings are not, and that's the actual feathers going down the actual back of the spine. So you kind of gotta really think about how the feathers are really shaped here. And this is where I'm kind of discussing and deciding how I want to take some of that material away, create that recessed area where the feathers are technically underneath other feathers. Building out particular areas, and then is a long process, I know, but it's well worth every second that I spend sculpting the overall shape. The shape needs to be there before there's any kind of detail work. So go ahead and sit back as we go ahead and finish out the back here. Enjoy some of this nice background music, and then we'll catch you back in a few minutes. I will jump in here now, guys, and just say that you can really start to see the general shape popping through here. Now, I did put a piece of clay there under the tail feathers just to keep the clay sculpture from bobbing up and down as I apply texturing pressure to that. And then that will be removed before the baking process. Yes, the bird is still technically a weak point, but hopefully once I get all of the feet and that material on there, I also get the resins and epoxies on there, then it will be pretty strong overall. Still kind of texturing here and there as we apply texture and divots to the wing formations coming down to the tailbone there and to the tail feathers. But as you can see here, I'm starting to apply a little bit of a wing or a little bit of a feather texture to some of the recessed portions of those wings. So what I'll do is I'll just use a small silicone tip tool, sometimes the big one, and I'm applying just a nice gentle pressure and then pulling downward, and it gives you a divot like a feather. So I'm using that in particular areas where I want the feathers to be more noticeable, particularly up right before it comes down to the wings from the top shoulder. I guess I should have learned some of the names for these bones and some of the wing textures and shapes, but I did not do so. Again, we just kind of jumped into it, and I said, I'm gonna sculpt a raven today. Let's just do this, guys. So as you can see, this video does run around 30 minutes long, and this is almost at 6 times speed. So as you can see, we spent a good amount of time creating this project, and it was worth every minute of it. I really did enjoy the process of creating this, and I think that I'll probably come back later on down the road and we will probably sculpt another raven or a bird, maybe even a larger one, maybe out of monster clay from Monsters Inc. So maybe here in the future this will make another reoccurrence. Maybe I'll make an Edgar Allan Poe type of a project or something similar. You can really see the wing and the feather texture right there on the right back of the wing there. It's very prominent. It looks really good. So at this point, I'm really starting to get happy about how it looks. I'm really starting to get more confident in the general shape. I do find particular areas here around the base of the wings there, around the chest bone there, where I feel like it needs a little bit more material. So we do blend in some more before we add more feather texture to those. Of course, these aren't technically absolutely visible at the majority points of the build. It's still kind of good to have this in here, kind of make it more a little bit defined, and that way that when you look at it from a distance or from across the room, you can really see those wings and the shadow that they create against the actual breast of the bird there. All right, so we're going to jump camera here, and I'm going to continue working on the actual head of the bird here. Now you can kind of see I went ahead immediately and I applied another long layer of clay to the very top, around where the forehead is, down the eyes, and then to the top of the beak there. It needed to be a little bit more prominent. A lot of ravens have a very prominent beak. It's not very narrow. It's very, 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 I wouldn't say broad. It's very strong, let's say a strong beak, and it needs to continue on throughout that process. So we're going to add a little bit more material underneath of the beak as well, just to give the bird a very dominant look, make it look like it has a lot of muscles and a lot of build out, a lot of feather texture that it would normally have. We're going to add more clay to the top of the beak there as it comes down to the very fine point. And a lot of birds don't have a really fine point on the beak there, so I do leave it as just obviously it's a point, but it's not a thick one. It's very tapered, it's very doled out a little bit, and I want to make sure it has a little bit of an arch to the top of the beak before it goes into the feathers of the let's just say at the bridge of the beak. Applying a little bit more material to the back of the neck there. Now remember that our bird is facing one direction and then turning its head to the other, so we need to make sure we bring that bulk of that feathered clay down the back of the neck, and then it kind of curves towards the spine there. Now we're going to come in here in a moment and we're going to add a lot more texture to this, so don't worry, this isn't how it's going to look permanently, but we just need to get the overall general blocked in shape and get it really happy with how it looks with the actual back and the wings that we've already created, which we're already very happy with. There you can really see how I kind of apply that texture there. Very liberal pressure and then pull downward, and it kind of conditions that clay. All of this clay is very conditioned, so it's very soft. It's easy to do this. If this clay were sitting off to the side in a cold room for a very long amount of time, then this would be more difficult to do. Now we're really going to start to work on the beak here, and this is actually where I picked up some of my content for the short that I'm creating for YouTube and TikTok as well. So you'll see this portion of the build kind of reoccur in that little short video. It's very fun, and I think I included an Edgar Allan Poe part of the Raven in that, so I'll definitely have to make another Raven in the future where I kind of incorporate a Edgar Allan Poe type of monologue, or maybe like a read out loud type of thing, or maybe just an Edgar Allan Poe project with a Raven would be very fun. So as I pulled that material down and away from kind of like the beak and the kind of structure of the face there, I was like, ooh, I really like how that clay is kind of cascading down away from the top of the head there, down onto the shoulder, the back, the wings, and the breastbone there. I really think I liked how that looked, so I went ahead and just pulled off individual pieces of clay in a string-like fashion here. Very random, and we're going to blend those in with a silicone tip tool in a very random fashion, but kind of keep a lot of that texture and that molded design. Of course, we're doing all these one at a time, so it takes a few minutes, but it's well worth it, and it gives it a very rough style of plumage coming down from the back of the head and around the lower part of the beak there. It looks really cool when it's all said and done. Continue that down around to the spine there. A lot of the pictures and reference photos you look of ravens and crows, they have very random plumage. Obviously, it's not truly random because it's not in all unshapen directions. Everything is designed that way for a reason throughout their evolution and their creation. But definitely want to try to keep some of that randomness, or that unruffled, very ruffled look that we would expect to see out of a wild raven who's just perched there and just watching you unsettlingly. Now I'm using a different type of tool here, and it's more of like a dagger angled silicone tip tool. It comes in majority of kits that you can get off of Amazon or Michaels, and I'm going to go ahead and add striations into the actual feather texture here. So as we continue with the feather texture here, this is actually quite a bit of a process, and then at this point we're really starting to get happy with the overall shape of the project, and we're just really starting to work on those final details there. We're also going to incorporate an eye here. Now the overall eye is just a little dollop of clay that gets blended in, and we'll actually use a wire tool here to actually apply the actual eye inside the eyelids. So we want to make sure we incorporate those eyelids at least a little bit so that they're visible there, and we can kind of shade the eyes in different ways. If it's just a dot without anything else, it looks good, but it's not realistic, or it doesn't look like it belongs there. It needs to have a little bit more dimension to those eyelids around the actual eyeball. You can really see the texture around the eyes, really making it look really professional. It looks really good and really clean cut. I'm really happy with how it's turning out at this point. I'm really starting to get excited. I'm really thinking that it's really paying off to create something like this, and I'm just really happy with how it's turning out. At this point, I am off of TikTok Live, so I'm not on TikTok Live. I'm just doing this very, very casually. I'm stopping and starting the camera over and over again just to reduce the amount of time that I'm on of the actual content here on YouTube. But all of the movements that I make here are very deliberate, and they're very I already have all of this kind of sketched out in my head how I expect it to look, because it's coming along very easily. Applying a little bit of that feather texture to the top of the beak is very important. It makes it look very realistic, and when we come in to kind of texture that with a feathered paint type of look, it'll really look good, and will give the beak a kind of a very dark look, maybe a pitch black with maybe a little bit of burnt umber mixed into there to give it more of a brownish tone. And then what we'll do is we'll give it some bright white highlights around the very top bridge of the beak itself. And then maybe around the lip where the actual beak separates would be cool. So we'll kind of see how we decide to paint that. I don't know if I want the Raven style paint to be leaning more towards like a pitch black, maybe a gray, or even like a midnight cobalt blue, or a Windsor blue, or even a purple. I don't know which color tone or tinge I would like for it to go yet. I could even paint it in like a metallic type of finish where it has like a really shimmering feather texture. We'll just kind of see how it takes us and where we go along the way. Maybe I'll incorporate a little bit of all of that into it just to kind of make it really fun and bubbly, and just kind of keep the project paint-wise really laid back. Applying some final little textured feathers there around the eyes, and I actually come back and I apply a little bit more of an eyeball to the inside of that little groove that we cut out there. There we are, incorporating that a little bit more material there. I felt like I took too much away there. All right, so here we are so far. This is the overall structure that we have created, the actual blocking in, the overall kind of detail work around the muscle texture and where the feathers need to be angled. And as you can see here, I already got one of the feet pretty much locked in here. Now, this is where I said that it was sitting a little bit lower than it probably would normally sit if it were sculpted separately. I just did not make that armature wire actually long enough, so we're just going to deal with it. We're going to make it kind of fun and just laid back, and then also having it a little bit sitting lower on its actual legs towards the feet, it keeps it from possibly getting destroyed in a shipping process, or any kind of if it gets knocked or hit. By keeping that center of gravity lower and instead of way up in the air, it just makes it more durable. As you can see here, to create these little toes of the feet here, I rolled out a piece of clay with a sharp angle there. I kind of edged out the circular shape of each individual node of the feet there, and then I applied a little bit of clay texture to each individual node of those toes. We're going to go ahead and blend that in just kind of gently, but at the same time, we're going to try to get rid of some of the hard angles of the spaces between each node of the foot, and then it is ready to be blended into the actual foot of the leg there. Now, of course, we had to do a total of 4 of those for each individual foot, and I do I do understand that these are probably a slightly size larger than what the Raven that we sculpted would probably have. And I'm okay with that for now. If I really wanted to go above and beyond, I could always come in here later and really smooth and remove a bit of the clay on top of each individual toe. But for today, for this project, it being our first Raven, I'm really happy with how it turns out. Let me know in the comments, you guys, do you think these toes are a little bit too large? Yes, I know she's sitting lower on the topper than she should be, but I think that it really turned out great overall. I think that having the toes actually long enough to reach around the edge of the top of the gravestone really kind of finishes it out. And just remember, at this point in time, we still have not baked the topper. It is all done together. All of this is raw clay, and we're going to bake the topper, the main base, and the Raven all in one go. It is going to be a single bake. Now, the base had already been baked once, so this will be the second bake on the base and the first bake on the topper and the Raven. Applying a few added little extra details here before we're finished up, and here we are in its entirety, you guys. I am extremely happy with how this thing turned out. It is beyond my expectations. This Raven turned out absolutely great, and it's a perfect addition to the very top of the gravestone. If you're just now checking out this part of the build, make sure you hit up the playlist, which will appear here in just a minute at the end of this video. And this is session number 7 of the sculpting process of this From the Grave tumbler. So if you want to go check out all those other videos, the cobblestone, the base, the arm, leading up to this part of the project, definitely go do so. And we are going to start scheduling the live events to paint this bad boy. And of course, we will do a weigh-in towards the end of the project to see how much the entire thing weighs. It is also wrapped around a 3D stainless steel tumbler. Whether you want to drink from it or display it as a sculpture, it is here for you. Again, guys, I hope you enjoyed this content here. I hope you enjoyed the laid-back format of the video, so you can see the background of my workstation here. It's not some professional kind of background like usual. Let me know in the comments, did you enjoy the sculpting of the Raven? Would you like to see another Raven in a different type of clay? Make sure you subscribe, follow, and I'll catch you later.